Hello! And in this video I'm building a sunken tram station. Now this tram station is a real life sunken tram station in the Netherlands. There is also a tram line along the top that runs north to south, and this tram station runs like east to west. So this build was actually a fairly complicated build, just because I did things weirdly. I didn't really plan how this would really go. Like the first time I tried to build the small junction on the top, I tried to build it as close as possible to real life. But the only problem with that is it is very compact and very small, and if almost could be its own build, that it's such a complicated intersection to build within City Skylines. So in the end I simply just did a normal intersection and then drew the lines very similarly to what they look like in real life. And it worked quite nicely. Yeah, I may try and do the build of the junction in the future, but for now it's just that simple crossing that I've done, because I wanted to focus mainly on the sunken tram area. So here you can see I have sunken the tram rail into the ground, but what I didn't use tram tracks. I used like a train tracks, just to make it different, because in real life they have a gravel base, what looks like a gravel base, on the ground of the tracks, and so a train is more than suited, and I can easily use a custom tram that's been added to the train like category from before we had trams in the vanilla game, and it looked quite nice. And in the end, this turned out quite good. The only thing I didn't really like was using the red decals all on the surface, but I'll talk more about that when they appear, because it was just a bit weird. But as you saw there, I placed a invisible station because I wanted to make my own station. I didn't want to be limited by any of the prefabs that come from the workshop. So I ended up using a lot of like tram props and some other things to just make the sort of station that I wanted to make. Even so, it didn't turn out 100% how I wanted it to turn out. It ended up looking a bit big, but then that's the problem with City Skylines, is that everything just tends to be of a different scale. It just seems to be slightly larger than real life. Like all the roads are bigger than they are in real life, and buildings are actually, I think buildings are smaller than in real life. But a lot of the main things behind City Skylines is just things are just too big, and it's hard to get the right scale to build things as the same size as real life. Sometimes it can be done, but most of the time it just doesn't look good, doesn't work out well. So here I am, simply trying to connect the roads to the right areas to make a make it more similar to real life, like limiting the way traffic can go using traffic precedent and lane connectors within traffic precedent to connect the lanes to which I want the vehicles to go through. I also do a custom traffic light. We're not going to sit through that, it's very boring. If people want, maybe I could try and make a traffic light sort of tutorial, how to use custom traffic lights. I'm not great on them myself, but I could probably come up with a basic tutorial from how to use them. So if you want me to do that, comment down in the comments and just let me know, and I'll think about it. So here I am drawing the lines on the road. I had the simulation run periodically during this build to try and match where the cars are driving, because that's the worst part when you draw lines and it all looks good, and then you run the simulation and the cars are driving on the lines. It's annoying. If only there was a way to path them easily in the correct direction, because you could obviously do it with making a custom junction with using highway roads and stuff and connecting them, but it's a pain. If only there was an easy way, like lane connectors, to connect and like draw a path for them. But alas, I don't think that's ever gonna be a thing within City Skylines. It just doesn't make sense with the way the game works. So I'm building this junction, and as you can see, it is a very like, I suppose, Dutch inspired junction. Very much like it. I mean, it is very similar to the one that is in real life. It's slightly different because of the way that the cars are taking different paths and stuff, and it is a bit weird. But I do use the yield symbols that are in the Netherlands. Here they are now. They're small triangles, which is like the yield, I believe. I also do something different with the pedestrian crossings, because I noticed that they had quite a thick like box sort of thing. So I put two of the yield things together, and it looked very similar to the one in real life. Tiny bit different because it's more sloped than the one in real life, but it actually looked quite nice to mark out the crossings. And there we go, I've added them to the to where I'm going to put the crossing. And that crossing is for a bike path, so I'm using the red Japanese go slow marker to mark out the bike crossings. And I draw a lot of the bike crossings around the place with that one. Now here I am on the red. So as I said earlier, it was a bit weird. I mean, I didn't really like how it was going together because the decals just look strange. They're not uniformed. They're slightly different on either side, which is a bit of a problem when doing large areas, I find, because then they tend to have these marks that just repeat and repeat, and it just looks weird. So there we go. I've skipped forward because I never didn't finish it till very recently, the red, because I just wasn't impressed with how it looked. And now we're doing the staircases down to the tram area, and I've obviously put decals on the tram like floor just to give me a general idea of what it's going to look like, where the tram floor is going to be, how big it is. And I'm using these stairs because in real life they do have a staircase. They also have a escalator, and they also have lifts. Now, it's a shame that there are no escalator props in on the workshop or anything like that, so I couldn't add an escalator, but I did add lifts. Now, originally I added some old lifts that were on the workshop. I believe they were lifts that allowed you to walk onto a road above, but the day after I placed those, Revo came out with some new pedestrian bridges. Not new pedestrian bridges, some new pedestrian overpass like lifts, and I use those, and they look very nice. They look very modern, very fit in very well in the area. So there's the like finished bare bones of the staircase. Just trying to tweak a couple things, make it look a bit more uniformed on its heights. And then I copy it and I place one to the side, so I've got a spare copy, and then move it to the other area. I obviously had sides. These sides were a bit big, but I couldn't really get a better slope, so I just used these. I probably could have done something maybe with procedural objects, but I still have big problems with procedural objects just because I'm not that proficient in using it yet. Maybe when the ergonomics update comes out it will be better, but Just at the moment it's just so much easier just to use props. I still try and use it from time to time just to keep trying and improving slowly over time, but I'm no Noguchi, who has done amazing things with procedural objects. So here I am adding railings to the top of the sunken area, just because I felt like the wall wasn't enough that I had, so I added some nice railings on the top here. I believe these are like UK, I think they're called traffic railings or something like that. They're very nice, and they're fitting very nicely in this area. So in real life, there are some buildings back here, and they're fairly big, and they're also staggered. So what I do is place these two together, and I stick another one to the side, and then lower it into the ground. This creates the sort of staggered look, I suppose. But the problem is you're left with obviously the holes from where the building has pushed down the terrain. And obviously to fix that, you simply use pedestrian roads to cover the holes, and it makes it nice and flat. I obviously did that in my previous video, the park and ride with the like harbour, and that one turned out very nicely, and it was all smooth on top, and it's a perfect way to make the terrain smooth if you don't want to use building anarchy or stuff like that, because I always have a lot of problems with building anarchy either not working, or next time I load the save things are at different places. So I find this just a lot easier because they're always in the same place when I reload, and it just always works better for me anyway. Here I am adding the pedestrian roads to flatten out the terrain over the buildings. Now just finishing up a bit of the like foliage of the build. Obviously I've skipped a lot. I didn't record me doing the lifts, which are there, you can see them, and I didn't record me adding the tram station. So there is the tram. It's a combination of the tram props and a tram actual like stop that I removed the tram rail in, so I could just place it there whenever I wanted to. I didn't add the this because for some reason I just wasn't like feeling the build, I suppose. And when I'm not feeling it, it's very hard to record, because I always, even though I'm just recording, I always feel like I should be doing something, because otherwise it means a lot more editing for me to try and cut down all the times where I'm just sitting there looking at things or building extremely slowly, that even a like 4x speed could not like account for that. So for this final bit, I am detailing the sort of like, not really wasteland, but it's like land next to this tram, next to the road and the rail network. And in real life, I believe most of this is like grass with a bit of dirt, so I just go a bit more dirt heavy and place some prop grass down in places, filling up the area, trying to make it look more realistic, adding some sort of rubble in the places where the rubble like may have accumulated over time, maybe under the bridges where work has been carried out on maintenance. So that was a fairly short video, and I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time.